our past certification process was in some ways theoretical. So the oral examination process was 10 case scenarios, and yet otolaryngologists come out of their training program and they develop certain practice, and we have created a process that will allow us to assess what the otolaryngologists are actually doing and how they're functioning in their local setting and how they are, and will also allow us to assess their professionalism, which is something we hadn't been able to assess in the past. And I think nowadays, in this current environment where a lot of the information that we used to have at our fingertips, we can really find online quite easily. So we need to be able to assess people's professional behavior, how they're billing and coding, how they're managing complications. And so by changing the process, we're going to be able to do this. And I think that is really going to allow us to demonstrate to the public that people who hold board certification are performing at the standard that the public can trust. I think the name change really helps the public understand what an otolaryngologist does. I think the change in practice was really gradual over decades prior to the name change specifically. But for the public, saying that you're an otolaryngologist doesn't necessarily mean anything. And we felt like the common name of ear, nose, and throat wasn't really an accurate reflection of what otolaryngologists do. So by adding head and neck surgery to our name, I think it makes it more clear to the public that people who are certified in otolaryngology head and neck surgery are surgeons who operate from the neck up. I think it's still a working board in a lot of ways, but it is true that we used to do a lot more of the reviewing all the items for all the exams, the written exams, the training exams, the oral exams. And so we have engaged the exam council members to participate in that. And we feel like that is really helpful, not only for the directors, but to engage other otolaryngologists in the process so they understand the process and then are better prepared to take leadership positions later on. The work of the board was pretty standardized for a long time, and then there have been many changes that have really expanded the amount of work that the board needs to do. An example of that would be continuing certification. It's changed from a single point-in-time exam to a continual process that's done electronically. We have sub-certification examinations that need to be managed. And so the amount of work that the board does has really expanded over the past 10 years. Well, it's an amazing process. So it starts with the blueprint of the exam. So we generate the overview of the outline of the exam, if you will. So we know that we need to cover certain topics, and then we have people, the item writers, generating these items to populate the exam to match the blueprint. And the blueprint is generated from another level of analysis called the job task analysis that really tests or surveys what otolaryngologists are doing across the country. And so it turns out that the type of work that any practitioner in a field does really changes over time. And so it's a dynamic process. The layers of review are really important to make sure that we get accurate information, accurate items, and content that really reflects what we know and is evidence-based. Continuing certification, I think, is really important because as the further out you get, sometimes the more isolated you get from what's going on in the mainstream of the field. And so continuing certification really holds people continually accountable to demonstrating their knowledge and judgment. And so the format of continuing certification being an ongoing process, I think, is so much better than the old way of a single point-in-time exam every 10 years. So this way, people are continually responding to questions. They understand when they get questions wrong. They can see a critique and references so that they can actually learn and improve continuously. I have been involved with 2 strategic plans during my time on the board. And the first strategic plan 7 years ago was really very much driven by the directors. And we posed certain questions, and we convened amongst ourselves and addressed those questions and set the direction. For this strategic plan, we employed a consultant that did scenario testing. And so they created 4 different worlds in 2040 of what medicine in America might look like. And so we broke up into groups and really created board certification processes that would meet the needs of these different worlds. And so then we came together and found what was common to all these worlds and what we felt was going to be a priority in 2030. And so it was a really rigorous process. Sometimes we were uncertain about what we would end up with, but it really turned out to be very robust and really made us think about things. And I think we came up with some great priorities. Through the process of this most recent strategic plan, we have really understood what we want to do in our future certification process. So we've identified what types of behaviors we're wanting to assess, and we have identified how we are going to do that.